continue to the quality of life. This chapter is a bit different to the others. It's not about a tool or an operator. It's just about some things that might make it easier for you to work with Linux or Bash on the command line. And what I'm going to talk about is background processes. Just one moment, I want to see how much time I should use. Okay. We will talk about background processes. We learn how to start them with ampersand and how to terminate them. Some useful terminal shortcuts and their usage. How to edit a .bashrc file. And also a bit about aliases. So background processes. Usually, if you start some program, perhaps with an input, it will start to process, and then it will give an output, perhaps to screen, perhaps to a file, whatever. In many cases, the terminal is unable to accept new commands while the process is running. On the other hand, we know that Linux can do multitasking. So how do you get to a situation where you can start another application from your terminal? And the answer to this is foreground and background processes. Normally, when you run some process, this process runs in the foreground. You cannot do anything else in that terminal until it completes. But there is a bash feature of job control where you can either move processes to the background or back to the foreground. And you can also start a program directly running in the background. So say you want to start some command, and you do that. You give the command, whatever options you want, whatever input, and so on. And then at the very end, you put an ampersand. If you do that, then it will go to the background and run there instead. So imagine you were making a tarball and compressing it of something that you want to back up, and it has a lot of files. So it might take a long time, and then you just send it to the background, and it will just run there, and you can work in the terminal. Of course, it will use processes, but or computing power, but you can still use the terminal. So what if you instead had started it and it's running in the foreground? Well, you can suspend it with Control Z, and it is still there, but it's just suspended, but it isn't ended. But you will usually get a job ID when you do so. And then it just sits there and doesn't do anything. But you can then take this job and move it to the background where it will start to work, to run again. And then you again have the terminal open to do stuff. Or you can then check on it, or you can move it back to the foreground if you want to. So let's imagine here I am going to make a tarball, compress it from my download directory because I have now downloaded enormously amounts of data files or whatever. And I know it's taking a long time and I don't feel like sitting and waiting for it. So I suspend it with Control Z. I'm getting a job ID here. And then I are told it's stopped. And then I am moving it to the background. When I move it to the background, I'm told this here job 1, and this is what it's doing. It's now in the background. If I say jobs, I can be told what jobs I have running in the background and what number they have by ID. And then I could move it back to the foreground if I wanted to by the command FG and the job ID. So for the above job here, that would just be FG %1 because 1 was the job ID. If you do not give a job ID, then FG will assume the current suspended job. If you restart a suspended job, you can either move it to the background and talk about the job ID or to the foreground if it's there. You can always get the job IDs with the command jobs. And you can terminate a foreground job with Control C or a background job by sending it to the foreground and then use Control C. Of course, there are other ways of killing a job. You can do so with the command kill and the process ID, which is PID. But we won't cover that here other than saying you can get the process IDs from something like PS-EFH and then grep for a suitable string like Firefox if that's what you want to kill. And then you can do kill and the process ID. You can do kill -9 if nothing else works, but it might misbehave and is not recommended, but you can do it. I felt that I had something. That was a good command. Yeah, I have a small script that I called slow command. And if you want to try it, you could try start that slow command. And then I'm going to do Control Z. So I suspend it. I get a job ID. I say background. And then it took this one here. Then I say jobs. And it's running in the background. And now it's finished. But at least it was long enough that I could run it and move it back and forth. And you can, in the AWK-QOL for the stuff I had here, there you will find a program called slowcommand.sh that is slow enough that you have time to move it back and forth. Actually, I don't. Yes, it's done. Okay, good. So that one you can play with. Some useful terminal shortcuts and their usage. This one you probably know. Tab. You hit the tab to autocomplete a file, directory, or command. Control C. You kill the current foreground process. We just talked about this. Control Z. You suspend it. Also just here. Control A is useful if you're typing some long command and you find that you actually want to put something in the beginning. So you press Control A and then your prompt moves there. Control E moves it to the end if you are now happy and want to continue from there. Control L will clear the screen, just like typing clear. Control K deletes the line after the cursor. Then you go back a bit, and then you are saying Control K, and it removes everything after this. If you are using Emacs as editor, you will recognize many of these. Control Y pastes the most recent thing you cut or copied. Control D will delete a character at the cursor's position. And Control U deletes the whole line. Control W will delete the word before the cursor. And Control P means go to the previous command in your command history. That's the same as arrow up and arrow down. You can always see the saved history if you type history, like this here. But Control P so goes up. Control N down, like up and down. Control R, more usefully, lets you search for a command in your command history. So say I am looking for the ln command, I'm just typing ln and then it suggests this long command here. And maybe I don't want to redo it or I want to just make changes to it. But in any case, that is very useful. Okay. So how to edit your .bash rc. We mentioned this file earlier when I showed you how you could quickly send a change to your library path or your path to the .bash rc. This is something that's found in your home directory. It's a script file that's executed on login. It also has some configurations for the sessions of the terminal, and you can modify it. For instance, you can modify shell history, aliases, paths, and a number of other things. For instance, I have that the links are shown in a specific color, executables are shown in a specific color, regular files is just normal color or whatever. What to notice is that .bash rc is a hidden file. Configuration files in Linux are usually prefaced with dot and not shown unless you give the option -a to ls. So ls -a will give you the hidden ones. So if you want to see what's in it, you can use cat. So cat $home .bash rc. And this is my bash rc. There's a lot of stuff in it. If you want to edit it, you can use your favorite command line editor. Either something vi, vim, or nano would be common. So let's try and open it. And it looks like this. Do note, if you are editing your bash rc file at one of the HPC centers, don't put module loads into it. If you do that, then you risk that maybe we have installed a newer version and now the default one is a different one, or the old module version no longer works, or you decide you now want to use a different version of GROMACS or whatever it is, or maybe you don't remember that you put a module load there and now you are trying to load something else that conflicts with what you load there. And since you made the change a year ago, then this is not the place you look and you get weird errors. So don't put the module loads there. You can instead make module collections. And you can read about that in the Selecting Software Modules program, if course material that we had yesterday. Another thing is, if you are making changes to this configuration file that is controlling how stuff looks and works, you should do a backup. So you could copy it to $home.bashrc.back or something similar. There is also usually what is called skeleton versions of the files in /etc/skel. So you can get a copy from there and then you get a default one. So if you want to keep what you made changes to, make a backup. So what are some useful suggestions? What you could put there are aliases. We'll talk about them very, very soon. Environment variables, Python environments, paths, library paths, so in software you install yourself. Customization of the terminal, like I had for different color for different types of files. Anything in general you want to be persistent between sessions. You can, for instance, change the history length. How many commands should be saved. that you can get to with arrow up and down, and that you can see with the command history. And if you want the prompt to look differently, I have done that here. If you want a colored prompt, if you Google it, you can get many different suggestions to things that you may or may not want. Don't add too much there, but if you find something cool, sure, I add it. And if you make changes to it, that is not active until you do either log out and in again, or source.bashrc, or short dot space dot bashrc. So as we talked about, you could set a path in bashrc. I probably have some paths, or I do have some paths, but finding them might not be easy. Or maybe I actually deleted that because I deleted the program. Anyway, changing the path, you put this here, path equals $path. And that is like we talked about before. And customizing the terminal. There are some things here that I took from mine. .bashrc. If you find that interesting, you can add any of those if you don't have them. It should be described mostly what it's doing. For instance, color support and things like that. But it's described in comments, I'm hoping. So the last thing I'm going to talk about are aliases. Aliases for commands means there are two commands for the same action. And why would you want to make an alias? Well, usually because it's shorter or easier to remember. You can have persistent aliases and you can have non-persistent aliases. The one I have here in the bashrc are persistent aliases. Maybe you think it's easier to say LA instead of ls minus a or something like this. Put them in the .bashrc, they are now persistent. I'm going to exit here. You can say alias. You will get a list of the aliases you have defined. If you create an alias with alias, my alias, or maybe my ls, I will do my ls2 because I already had an my ls, and then say equals, and then what I want to put in my ls. Maybe I want minus LAT, perhaps. I don't know. Then when I say my ls2, it will behave as if I typed ls minus LAT. But in this case, only until I log out and log in. When I then log in again, it's not valid anymore. Then I need to put it in .bashrc. And there are some examples of that here, and also more about how to do the persistent ones. And there is also a bunch of exercises, and I don't know, there's not a lot of time, but take 2 minutes and try some of this out. And then we'll come back and let Richelle take over for an evaluation.